What is up, folks? Welcome back to Mountain Witch Tarot channel. I am your host, Sarah, and today we are looking into Donald Trump's end of September, beginning of October. We're looking for some predictions for what we might expect coming from the regime in the new month. Now, before we get started, don't forget to click the like button, and if you enjoy political divination, feel free to stick around by hitting the subscribe and become part of the community. So you might notice here we have 6 cards already on the table. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know that before I do these tableaus for Donald Trump, I like to get a general sense of where I'm going and what I need to focus on. I ask the cards, what is going to be the next loudest thing that comes from the regime? And what I got here, I think it has a lot to do with spreading secrets, spreading disinformation about Letitia James. Now, I have reassigned this card to represent Letitia James. I also have a reassignment for Tom Homan, which will be the safe card, and we'll use the swords card to represent political violence. So we'll see if those cards come out in this tableau, but this one did come out. So I think not only is it disinformation, I think that this issue is going to be a little bit bigger than, you know, what I even initially thought, because at first I was like, oh, well, this is just something that's going to blow over and nobody's going to talk about it anymore. In case you don't know, Donald Trump sent a tweet or a truth to Truth Central that was most likely meant for Pam Bondi. He accidentally publicly tweeted it. So the bottom line is interesting too in this context. When we look at this spread, we usually reassign this card to be like his shadowy alliances, but paired together with the heart, I believe that this is a reference to his closest accomplices, the ones that know the most, i.e. Pam Bondi. And then we have like kind of being exposed, you know, exposure. If we see this card come out in the tableau, could be an indicator that this situation is going to be bigger than what we might think. So let's go ahead and get started on the tableau. And I will say that if we get the Tom Homan card, which again is the safe card, we may be looking at, you know, something possibly with that developing in late September, early October. If, you know, we get the metal card again, then I'm going to take that as confirmation that the Letitia James situation is going to lead to bigger things. I feel like what we're seeing here is a pretty good indicator that whatever he's doing to Letitia James or whatever he had planned to do, the thing that his heart desires most is most likely coming to an end. I think most likely, and this makes sense logically too, is if, you know, whatever he had up his sleeve, now that he's kind of outed himself, it's obviously not going to work as well as it would have had he been able to keep it secret. And I think it's interesting that we got the stars card again in the top row here to go along with this message, because, you know, this is probably the disinformation that he's been spreading about her, because he's, you know, for, I think since last year, he's been talking about how she had all these scandals and things going on. And, you know, obviously it was unfounded. And now he's complaining that nobody can find any dirt on her. So it kind of just feels like the stuff that he's spreading to kind of like denigrate her is, you know, it's likely coming to an end. It's not going to work out as well. And then we have the bear card here, which is pretty interesting considering the context, because everything else makes sense. And then it's like bear card. So when I think of bear, I think of like a big problem that's, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem had you not poked it. You know, so one of the things that I'm kind of thinking for this is like he brought this problem onto himself. But this is also a financial reference as well, just by regular Lenormand standards. So prosperity and things like that. And let's go ahead and get the next line, because the context will develop and change as we go. So you might remember in the last tableau we did, we actually reassigned the cross card for the first time because we wanted to talk specifically about the Jeffrey Epstein files. And so I did not necessarily reassign this card for this spread. So now I'm kind of thinking like, is this a general problem or burden, or is this the Epstein files? So I kind of feel like it is here to show us the energy of the Epstein files because we have the letter next to it. And then beyond that, we have the snake card. And looking at these three cards together, I think it's here to talk about the Epstein files. So this problem is, again, back together on the board, which is great news because you guys know I was really worried for a while that it was getting pushed out of the spotlight by all of the other craziness that had been happening. But I think this is the Epstein files, especially because we have the snake here and double meaning for the snake representing energy of a woman, female energy, but also representing a problem that you didn't see coming or one that is unpredictable, one that you can't control. And it's one that either you avoid it or you take your chances. So kind of getting a reference to the Epstein files here. And if that's what this reference is, and we go a little further, then we kind of see like a little bit of luck or possibly even a little bit of risk, depending on, what frequency this card is kind of coming in at energetically. And we'll be able to tell by context once we get more cards down. But so it could be a small option, small decisions, choices to be made, or, they're there, but they're not profound. And then we have like a sense of urgency. And then with the ship and key card, I think we have access to could be something financial. So there could be something coming through about the financial aspect of the Epstein files maybe being released. Definitely seeing some type of access unlocked here and some type of progress. So good news. If this is a reference to the Epstein files, and I believe it is, I think, really it is. So let's keep going and see what else we get. Here's an interesting line. Let's see what we got here. So we've got the administration, the White House, and growing. And as soon as I saw these two together, my first thought was seeds of disinformation, growing seeds of disinformation, or maybe even just sowing seeds of disinformation. And what do those seeds of disinformation lead to? And then we have the sickbed and the book. So it's so easy right here to say like, oh, okay, yeah, they're covering up another health problem for Trump. They're always doing that. That's, we don't need Lenormand to tell us that that's happening. I think another meaning that we could possibly interpret here is the administration within the White House. So like his immediate administration. Potentially trying to, like some of them possibly burdened by the messaging that's coming from the White House. They are most likely trying to kind of come forward and either, make it known that they disagree with some of the rhetoric that's coming from the White House. I don't think it will be all of them, trust me. The ones he's got in the White House are obviously the most loyal. But I think there could be a situation where we see some surprising faces maybe come out and be like, yeah, we got to stop the political violence. And it could be that, since this card did appear pretty close to the heart of the story, could be that we see another politically motivated event. And like with the sickbed and the secrets, I think this is just progress continuously coming out about Donald Trump's conditions. Because it's, I said in one of his most recent tableaus that it was going to be on display again. There was a strong energy of seeing him in public having these really alarming public health situations. And then we've seen numerous things happen. And then, of course, our whole topic here, like this whole theme with the Letitia James tweet, is an indicator that he's not mentally well. And so once again, here we have kind of an opening up of the secret health issues. So I don't know how or why that's tying in to what I believe to be people close to him disagreeing with the violent rhetoric, or maybe trying to just say to the public, hey, like, we're not all on board with this. It's interesting that these two things are tied together. It may just be that we have a lot of things coming at the end of September, beginning of October. So sometimes the cards get a little bit muddled if there's too much energy and information. So that could be the answer to it. But I definitely think this looks like some people trying to unplug from the rhetoric because even they know that at this point it's too much. Also, it could be a little bit of the Jimmy Kimmel situation and the First Amendment basically being crushed by this administration. So let's go ahead and get the fourth line down and see what we get. You know that this is the loyalist card. These are Trump's closest, most loyal companions. And look what we've got. We've got the Tom Homan card and the fish showing up for abundance and financial references. Amazing. That is amazing. So let's see, what do the cards have to say about this situation? Definitely the Tom Homan reference here. So I think this issue is going to develop into something a little bigger. And the reason I say that, in case you're confused, is that we see a lot of things happen and come out. And I know we've all at some point said, like, oh, wow, another scandal that Trump won't be held accountable for. Like, we've all thought that before, right? This one kind of had the earmarkings of one that they would probably brush away. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to inquire about it, is because it's a big deal. I mean, all of the scandals have been a big deal, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that Trump is held accountable for them. This, according to the fourth line here, and we're getting pretty serious because we're 4 lines down, so this is like a big pressing issue by this point. This is indicating that this situation with Tom Homan may be here to stay. There's some exposure of repeated, with the Moon and Lily card, I think this is repeated actions regarding his dishonesty and revealing Tom Homan's dishonesty. Now, normally, this card we reassign to be Trump's presidential duty to the country because it's funny because he doesn't have any. But double meaning here, not only is this talking about Trump, but I believe this is talking about Homan himself. So also his duty to the country, he is compromised, basically. So it looks like there's a good chance that something could come out beyond this, that like this is not abnormal for Homan to take bribes. And it's, right in the center, we've got a revelation that sticks. There could be something bigger come out of this and could be more information come from it. The only thing we've got left now is the fate line. So let's go ahead and draw that and then we'll start our interpretations. Now, you guys might have noticed Trump did not appear in his tableau until we got to the fate line. So end of September, beginning of October, we're going to see Trump out of control of his situations. He is not on top of his game. He is back to struggling. This is becoming more and more prominent. And not only is he in his fate line here, he's the last card in his fate line. So what do we got? We got the tree, the tower, the mountain, and Trump himself. I'll tell you one thing that comes to mind here. I see this as him blocking government for a long time. He's in the way of how our government is supposed to be functioning and thriving. He is nothing but an enemy to a thriving democracy. And now, does that mean that block or challenge or whatever is coming to an end soon. Let's hope, but I'm never getting my hopes up about that again, just to be completely honest with you. I think the man's going to live forever. So, and it being in the fate line, it has a little bit of a stronger message, but it's like, well, but what comes of it? Like, we know he is a enemy and a barrier within a thriving democracy. But what comes of it? Well, I don't know. I guess we don't have an answer to that. So let's take a look at the tableau. Let's look at the four corners and the center and the three exit cards. So in the four corners, we've got Letitia James, we've got the bear, we've got the fish, and we've got the lily. So I think the first thing for me that pops into my mind seeing the four corners is that the thing with Letitia James kind of feels like her name's going to get completely cleared. And hopefully this is how this goes. Because we have a sense of like protection, but also prosperity. And then we have prosperity, finances, and abundance. And then we have basically your virtue. And since she's tied directly to it, I think this is a message as much for her as it is a tableau for Donald Trump. So I think that what happened with his accidental Pam Bondi tweet is going to inevitably clear her name completely. Like, it's going to maybe get to the point where this whole thing has to be dropped, because there is a big energy of protection and honesty and dutifulness and, her virtue revealed for all to see, financially even. And the abundance of things that he's accusing her of, like, come to light as, she is a virtuous person. She didn't do anything wrong. So then at the center of the reading here, and these cards are so crooked because my cloth is lumpy where it's been folded up in my dresser drawer, so I apologize for that. The four cards at the center, we've got, of course, the clover and the crossroads, and then we've got the bouquet and the scythe. So kind of thinking that that's got something to do with possibly a reference yet again to Letitia James, because to reiterate this, Donald Trump's energy is so low in this tableau that he barely even made it into the spread. So I think that his time and energy right now is kind of like compressed, pushed down, restricted by all of the other energies that he's invited into his life by just going around attacking people. I think that these four cards are mostly a message to Letitia James, honestly, because I feel like there's a sense of being cut loose and freedom and basically being unburdened by the problems that have been happening as of late or for quite some time. There is also a sense of being able to go in a new direction now that this situation is over or coming to an end. Now, with the three exit cards down here at the bottom, and this is kind of an obvious statement, forgive me, it's just what the cards say. More reminders incoming for the new month that Trump can't be trusted, that he, his loyalty to the country, his presidential duty to the country is non-existent. It's about secrecy. It's about his own problems, his health problems. He's probably spending quite a bit of time thinking about, how to mitigate what's going on with him. He's probably, and that's probably where his energy is going now that I think of it, is that he is expending his own personal energy on things like, how do I hide my health problems? How do I continue to appear strong and powerful and like the dictator that I want to be? Like, how do I keep up this appearance? And it makes sense too with this card next to it. Because I get the feeling of like strong warrior. You're like, how do I keep up this appearance? You can't. Nobody can. But he obviously is not going to admit that. He's not going to be human and just be like, hey guys, I'm getting older and things are getting harder. And, Joe Biden did that with Grace, and Trump will literally climb a tree backwards before he will do it. So I think he's expending all of his energy, and we're kind of seeing it in this row of cards right above his head, pressing straight down on him. And that's why he's allowing other people's energy to kind of take over at this point in time and dictate his daily life. So I know for him that must be incredibly difficult. So we love that for him. But we do have a pretty clear reference here to him focusing on himself and his own problems and not paying close attention to how things are progressing with all of the issues surrounding him, whether it's the Epstein stuff, the, case with Letitia James. And it's just like, I kind of get the feeling that as it spreads, it's just eating away at his power and his ability and really kind of bringing him down energetically and subsequently physically. So he is not having a good time right now. So we know Tom Homan is one of Trump's biggest loyalists, and why wouldn't he be? Because Trump made his bribery case go away. And if the fish card here has a double meaning, then Trump probably made multiple financial situations disappear. And, you think about disappear, and this is just such an amazing line to me, because here you've got like an abundance, a multitude of financial situations, and then they go into a safe and you don't see them anymore. Like they're locked in there in the darkness, hidden away. And I feel like they think this was something, or at some point they thought this was something that they had really kind of buried and put a lid on for, the foreseeable future. And it's just so funny that it is probably going to be a main issue because, like I said, it's the fourth line, which is a pretty powerful line in the tableau. Looks like a little passive information here connected to Tom Homan. He's definitely got people in the White House, like administration people, who are willing to kind of go to bat for him and kind of take his side and take up for him. But above their heads, they know that this is a problem. They know that it's true. Probably a general sense of concern for how things keep coming out and how many more things are going to come out. Because they've got this on their mind with the Letitia James issue. So definitely some panic amongst the administration because of all of the information leaks. And they're probably at a place where they're thinking like, oh my gosh, what next? What's going to come out next? Like, how do we make sure that the next thing gets buried and that we don't have any more of these types of leaks because they're getting harder to contain? It's really calling into question Donald Trump's reputation, not to us, but to the people who still support him. Because eventually, there's so many problems with this administration and with this man. Eventually, there's going to be a problem for everybody that is a quality enough problem that causes them to start to deconstruct. Do you know what I mean? Like every individual will get to a point where they're like, this is a bit much. Like we've seen it very recently with the Jimmy Kimmel stuff. A lot of big public Republicans, like I can't think of one right off the top of my head now, but a lot of them have come forward and said, this is not right. This is an attack on the First Amendment. So everybody has that bridge that's too far. And with the amount of problems that keep coming out of the administration, eventually there's going to be something for everybody. You know what I mean? So again, just a general sense here of more people unplugging from MAGA and from the Trump regime. I think that his crowd is shrinking and shrinking. And, with him being this blockage in the way in government, I think it kind of makes sense now after looking at the rest of the tableau, that people are really going to start to see him that way, that the government can't thrive with him in the way. So, and I think interestingly enough about that is kind of like a two-way street, because not only will the average citizen look at this situation and say, like, he's causing too many problems. Like, this is an inordinate amount of problems for one president, for one administration. I think also the shadowy alliances are going to start to see him as an enemy in the way and just an obstacle in their way to getting their agenda enacted. And that's when he's really going to be in trouble, because, at this point, we've got people like Stephen Miller and the Heritage Foundation kind of calling the shots and really making the biggest decisions. So when they decide that time's up, then that's probably when the time will be up. But very interesting reading here for Trump. There's not a whole lot about the Epstein files except that they are hanging on. They are remaining in sight. But again, the energy is kind of coming down a little bit from them. I think that they'll take a little more energetic priority than the Letitia James situation, just because this is probably going to get resolved and go away forever, and it's just going to be over. So with this being on the second line, it'll be a little bit more of a priority, but I think we're going to see a shift in the new month where the political violence and the Tom Homan or related situations take a little bit of the spotlight priority. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you enjoyed this reading. I will be back with another video very soon. If you enjoyed this reading, please hit the like button and feel free to subscribe, stick around, become part of the community. We would love to have you here. And until next time, have a great rest of your week.